Alice Forrester from Clifford Beers with us this morning. Alice, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Why, thank you. I'm so happy to see some very familiar faces and some new faces. And I really appreciate this opportunity to just get to know you and to meet you. Zoom is, of course, the worst thing to be able to do, but at least we're able to see each other a little bit. I think Stephanie had wondered if you could change your name for your organization, so we might be able to see a little bit of in the intro. Is that right, Stephanie? You want people to put their organizational name in there?
Yes, please.
That would be helpful for me. I was joking with my partner this morning, like I'm like the worst person to do this presentation to you on stress management. It's sort of like Dr. Heal Yourself. It's been, you know, a long haul, and you know, I think that in reviewing the presentation, it was good for me to remind myself of some of the concepts in there, but you know, these are not full concepts. There's just tricks of the trade and tools that you might be able to use with yourself. And I think that they're recording today's session, so you're welcome to show it to your staff, or happy to send you the slide deck and you can make it your own, you know, to use for your own group of folks. So I'm Alice Forrester. I'm the CEO at Clifford Beers Clinic. We are located in New Haven and in Hamden, and we have a sister agency in Norwalk, Mid-Fairfield Child Guidance Clinic. We are 100 and feels like 1,000 years old, 113 years old, I think, or 103. I don't know, I'm bad with math, but we are trying to hold our own and deliver telemedicine and in-home and emergency crisis services throughout the community. We've been working with a pretty cool collaborative, opening some of the learning hubs in the community with some of the churches locally. And, you know, we opened a warm line, which I'll give you the phone number for the state of Connecticut, actually, for people to just call and talk to a live person. So we've been trying to adapt, as most of you, I'm sure, have, to what the work is and how it goes, you know, how it's going. I normally, I think maybe if everybody could go on mute, that would be helpful. Although I hate asking that because it's, you know, I hate doing a presentation without having given back and forth, but that would be helpful. So I'm gonna throw up just the first screen and just make sure everything is working okay. I have like 6 screens up. Can you guys see that?
No.
You can't see that slide?
We're still just seeing participants' faces.
Oh, thank you. I guess, hold on, I'm sorry, just for a second. Now?
Yes, that's it. Now you just need to start the slideshow and we'll be all set.
That's all I need to do. Cool. So it's interesting because a lot of the discussions in the media right now are around mental health, and they're linking it to the high levels of stress. And I just wanted to talk for a minute around stress and its unbelievable impact on our lives. And, you know, this is something that you all know, the biological, mental, and literally on your social development and being able to interact with people. Stress really interferes with lots of health, good health outcomes. And Clifford Beers has been focusing on stress. Our community defines adversity or trauma with the word stress. So stress can have a lot of broad meaning. It can be both, you know, stress because you can't find your car keys to stress because you don't have a car. And, you know, each of these stressors add up in your body and certainly contribute to your well-being. And so we, as a clinic, have been thinking about, you know, working most importantly with the whole family. So we were, you know, primarily a child guidance clinic, but like, what does the whole family need to be able to thrive and, you know, be all that they can be? And also, how do you actually reduce the chronic stress? And as a mental health agency, we have found that often just addressing basic needs. So we have Lori, you know, from Haven's Harvest. I'm sure other people in the group now are addressing people's basic needs, which really, as you know, reduce, you know, an enormous amount of stress. There's been research we've done through the Moms Partnership that diaper need is highly correlated with maternal depression, right? And, you know, we've also found that if we decrease maternal depression, the children's depression and mental health needs actually decrease almost by 50%. So it's very critical to look at the environmental and physical and mental health stressors when you're thinking about working with a family and how do you reduce the stress. So the other thing is that, you know, we as leaders have been under, you know, an extraordinary amount of stress. I just had my annual review yesterday, and, you know, we lost a lot of money last year, so that was stressful, and it continues to be stressful this year. But, you know, the one thing I can say is that we were able to, you know, keep the business open this year, right? And, you know, we may even break even. Thank God for PPP, but, you know, the financial burden and, you know, making payroll and all of those things are extraordinarily stressful for us as leaders. And just, you know, navigating, getting your staff vaccinations if they can, and all of those things are crazy. So we're under a high, as Jackie said, a high level of stress. Before I go into the, I'm going to just reduce the people's picture so I don't have to look at myself. Before we go into the presentation and thinking about stress from a couple different perspectives, I really want to invite you to just take a deep breath right now and try to get comfortable. If you can, to just, you know, get into a space of calm. See if you can close your eyes if you want to. And, you know, imagine yourself in a more calm, peaceful, and focused space. It's always good to take some deep breaths through your mouth, the nose, and out through your mouth. Try to imagine a space or a place for you that seems calm, that is calm, and you feel like you can collect yourself and feel grounded. You know, if you can allow your mind, your unconscious mind, to, you know, maybe pick a place in nature that you might be seeing. I have the ocean above us, but, you know, it may be woods. It may be your bedroom or your house, but somewhere, if you can, out in nature, really see if you can place yourself there. Imagine what it's like to hear. What would you be hearing? What you might be feeling. Try to imagine what that would look like and how you would feel more calm, peaceful, and focused. And maybe you're already feeling a little more calm and focused. And if you're not, maybe you can notice your unconscious mind. And maybe you can sort of figure out how you can feel more calm and focused. Try to get as many images, sounds, smells in the image of a calm and focused space for yourself. And then if you can think of a simple way to incorporate this feeling of calm into your life in the days and weeks ahead. If you're feeling stressed out, or if you're having a moment, or you're feeling really overwhelmed, try to bring yourself to that space where you see it, you hear it, you smell it. You can allow your mind to be in that calm, restful place. So now I want you to try to bring your consciousness back into the room. Take a breath, take a moment. Try to pay attention to the sounds around you. Come back into the Zoom room. Take a deep breath in and a large exhale out. Another one in and another one out. Good. Thank you for taking that moment for yourself.
Alice,
So,
before
yes?
on with your presentation, what we're seeing is a small slide and your notes, not the full
Okay.
screen. So
Okay.
options, you can either do the slideshow yourself, or if you stop sharing your screen, Stephanie can put your slides up so that you can have the notes in front of you, and Stephanie will have the slide of the full screen for our participants.
Can you see just the full screen now?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Yeah, so Stephanie, why don't you do the full screen and I'll tell you when to change.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to get out of stop sharing. I don't know how to do that. But okay. Are you all right? Can you get in there?
You have to stop sharing on the bottom of your screen where it's.
I got it. Yeah, I see it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So adding to the stress of trying to do a presentation on Zoom. Cool. So if you go to the third slide would be good. So I think that today's conversation is just going to talk a little bit around what the acute stress can do for us, and some of the resources that are available in the city and the state to really help folks address the impact of the pandemic. I think that if we begin to look at how you can address the mental health and thinking about it through stress, you really want to recognize what stress looks like. And, you know, it looks different, of course, with every person. It can cause feelings of fear, anger, sadness, numbness, frustration. It can actually appear as changes in appetite and energy, desire, interest, difficult in concentrating, difficult sleeping. You can have headaches, body pain, stomach problems, skin rashes. I every other day think I have COVID because I have a headache, but it's mostly because I'm looking at the screen for 10 hours a day, right? It can worsen your chronic health problems, and it can worsen your mental health issues if you have some. You can find yourself using tobacco or alcohol and other substances more. But it's really important to normalize these things, because these are natural reactions in this environment of COVID, in the social justice work that is so acutely needed to be done. And, you know, the idea is that you don't blame yourself or try to find ways to not stay in there and get out of that stress place, and actually move into a place of that calm place maybe that you might have felt before. Of course, in my house, there's no calmness. There's a person vacuuming behind me. So if you hear it, that's what that noise is, sorry. Although that's calming for me to have my oldest vacuuming. Can you go to the next slide? So stress is absolutely a normal experience. It's a body protective mechanism. It is a normal reaction when change occurs. It's literally your body's reaction to adjust to a response. These changes can be physical and mental, as I mentioned it. But I think one of the most important things is that you can actually reframe stress. You can see stress as an opportunity or a notice or a messaging of your body to be able to pay attention to what's going on internally and not be so reactive all the time. And stress actually is important and needed to achieve certain goals, right? Stress is useful in creativity and innovation. Deadlines are very helpful. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit about how stress can be actually an important element in your work as a leader. So you can change the slide. There are three different kinds of stress that we talk about. One is good stress, right? One is, the idea of rising to a challenge. You have a grant due, and, that stress of trying to get it done, and you leave it to the last moment or whatever. But, once you've done it, you're able to feel better, and the stress helped you kind of get there. There's tolerable stress where bad things happen, but you're able to cope with it and often reach out to the support of your friends, other individuals. For me personally, the stress of COVID and the work has been extraordinarily helped by, connecting differently with my colleagues and know that I'm not alone in this process, and that I have a really amazing team, and we're able to kind of get through some of these things together. And then, there's the word, I don't really like this term, but they call it toxic stress. And unfortunately, toxic stress kind of puts a real negative turn on stress, but it actually is important because it actually can be toxic, meaning to your body that if you stay in high levels of chronic stress, there's definitely biological and neurological impact. We also know that high exposure to chronic adversity in childhood can have neurological implications. It can have, impairment in the executive functioning of the brain, and that a lot of our kids that we see who have some poor impulse control and judgment and reactivity are often kids who have had some really bad things happen to them and no real skills to be able to manage the stress. And when it's chronic and pervasive, it's just very, very difficult to step out of it and have a place where you can find that calm moment. So, thinking about good stress or tolerable stress, but then this toxic or chronic stress is important. If you can change the slide would be good. The chronic stress that I was talking about actually impairs the prefrontal cortex of your brain, where you're able to have empathy, insight, be flexible in your responses, modulate your regulation, modulate your body, where moral choices are made, and where you can be in tune with others, and moderate your fear. And what happens is when you're living in a chronic stress environment, you're actually living in your limbic brain, or and in the limbic brain, there's just a very there's only a few couple choices. One is fight, flight, or freeze. You're really in a place of am I safe? Can I connect with people, or people can I trust them? And your emotions live there, where you have very high emotional responses. And if your prefrontal cortex isn't developed, or if you're under high levels of stress and it's not being utilized, it's very hard for people to control their emotions there. So, I think it's very important for us when we're working with folks in the community and understanding when they're in that very high stressed place and they might be not able to modulate their emotions, that you have to actually work harder to be able to get into that place yourself so that you can respond. So, Stephanie, would you change this slide? I don't have to tell you this. I think we're all in like 6 versions of burnout, but burnout is real, and it's extremely important for you to notice when you're in that place. And it's going to take you a minute to realize it, actually, but these are the signs that you are emotionally exhausted. You turn off the last Zoom of the day and you go to bed, right? You're drained of mental energy. You can't even think of a concept for the grant. You can't even think of what you're supposed to do. You're easily frustrated, irritable, feeling distressed, feeling dissatisfied, thinking about changing your job, looking at Indeed.com every day, to see what else you could do as a job. Another thing, I said yesterday morning, I'm dead inside, right? It's that depersonalization, this idea of feeling kind of numb, not really getting where people are coming from, doing a lot of blaming, having a lot of negative attitudes, and also really lacking the feeling of accomplishment. Right. So burnout means that even if you are accomplishing great things, and even if these things are incredibly successful, you're able to keep your business going during COVID, you're still feeling less effective. You evaluate yourself and others negatively, and you really, begin to feel disillusioned. So these are important aspects because of burnout. And for you to remember that this is actually, these are just signs. They don't have to be real. These are signs for you to realize that you need a break, and you need to take some time, and you need to regenerate. They don't have to mean that you make big life decisions and change jobs or, quit because of it, but rather this is a sign for you to take care of yourself. And another really important thing that happens during burnout that is important for you to pay attention to, because we're all in the human service field where I imagine taking care of people, is we actually go into a thing called compassion fatigue, right? And that exhaustion allows you to actually not care as much and not really be impacted by others' needs, have your empathy kind of not really there, and that actually then can really erode the core reason you probably went into the nonprofit field altogether. Compassion fatigue is, it really takes away your feelings of empathy and kindness towards others. So just as if you had COVID or the flu or any other sort of disease that impacts you in your being able to work, it's very important for you to see burnout as and burnout in your staff as something that could be actually quite toxic for your ongoing work. Can you change the next slide? And this is probably why, is that stress is contagious. If you've ever been with somebody who's really stressed out, you know that it can be, you can all of a sudden you were doing okay before this person walked into your office, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm like really stressed out. I think that it's really important to realize that when you're in the presence of someone who is stressed out, or that if you yourself are stressed out, that you are, being a contagion, if you will, for your organization. And as leaders, our staff are acutely sensitive to where we're at, right? And if we're in that burned out emotional place, it's just going to cause this ripple effect throughout the organization. It's interesting, there was some research done on this, so it's not, just a concept, is that they did some research in elementary schools, and they found where teachers felt burnt out, that the kids themselves had high levels of cortisol, and which is the stress hormone, and that they couldn't find out whether the stressed out kids caused it or the stressed out teachers caused it, but they did find that that actually that the bad mood was deeper than just a passing moment. And we don't really know how long the stress contagion lasts. So if, it's almost like a match, if you start the stress in someone else, they may burn really fast, whereas you might be able to have some skills. Emily Ansel, who teaches at Yale, talks a little bit about when we help others, we really help ourselves, right? That stressful days can put us in a poor mental health. But her research has shown is that if we actually do small things for others, like even just holding the door open for somebody as they're coming into the building, we won't feel as stressed. They had a study of 77 adults, 18 to 44, complete a 14-day experiment where they used their smartphones to report their daily feelings and experiences. They reported all their stressful events they experienced, no matter who they were involved with or what happened, and then they tallied up the stress levels. And then they also reported on their acts of kindness that they committed, regardless how small they were, picking something up for someone or driving someone to the store or whatever. And they found that folks who committed a small act of kindness tended to have more positive days than those who didn't. The acts of kindness also impacted how they felt about the stress. It led to a weaker increase in negative emotions on their day, and they also found conversely that those who didn't help others had lower positive emotions and higher negative emotions when confronted with stressful situations. So the good news is that it's contagious, but so are other things like kindness. Can you change the next slide? So I think it's important for us to not always look at, if you haven't gotten this already, stress as a totally negative thing, right? There's distress that causes great pain and anxiety, and then there's eustress that actually is helpful and gives a feeling of fulfillment. There was a research done by Kelly McGonigal at the University of Wisconsin that asked specific questions around stress management, and they used a sample from the National Health Statistics, and they found that survey respondents who reported a lot of stress and a perception that stress has a very big impact on health had an increased hazard to their health, which converted to an increase of 43% risk of premature death. So if you believe that stress is bad and really bad for you, that actually it can be a predictor for actually, you know, that kind of outcome. I mean, we know that around our mind where we think, and respondents who reported a lot of stress, but that they didn't think that the stress had an impact on their health, had the lowest hazard ratio, so that they, you know, were in a healthier place. I think that, you know, this idea of eustress or useful stress is important, and I think one of the occurrences that I notice in the kids that we serve who have been exposed to high levels of chronic stress, that they don't feel, you know, they're burnt out, and they feel kind of depersonalized, and they feel more in distress. But if we were able to kind of turn around the thinking about it, not so much the adversity, I mean, the adversity is very difficult to turn around, but if we can give people some hope that stress doesn't mean, high levels of stress doesn't mean it has to be always that way, and that how do you use the stress that you feel to be able to achieve or give to someone else or connect with other people, you actually might be able to live a healthier and thriving life. It's just giving people a more positive look at, you know, where they can go. If you can go to the next slide. You know, another tool that we talked about early on in the mindfulness is that, you know, I think that you really, during stress, you have to focus on yourself. You have to notice what's going on, and you have to do what's effective to be able to calm yourself. Annie Lamont, I don't know if any of you know her work, but I just love her work. And she talks a lot about this radical acceptance. She's a person who's very active in her own recovery. And, you know, part of the radical acceptance is we have to accept what is, we have to deal with what is. We should, you know, try to stop wishing it would go away and plan on what you need to do to adapt. You know, I think that self-care is not only taking care of ourselves, it actually facilitates not passing the stress on for other people. So, you know, in order to create a space for self-care, you have to make time not to multitask. You actually really have to unplug. You have to focus on one thing. You have to notice your emotions, your physical sensations, and you have to really work on that mindfulness and try to let it go. I was talking to a good friend who lost her husband a few years ago, and both were big mindfulness practitioners. And as he was dying, she said it was the most beautiful experience because they had been doing this mindfulness work for so long that they were together in that place of radical acceptance. And they were able to have this both grief, but also this really incredible experience of being together through his death. So I think that, that's a very dramatic example, but I think that it's really a helpful practice for us to take some time. Some tools that I've used is automatic writing in the morning. You just write for 5 minutes, where you just take not a computer, a pad and a paper, and just write whatever you want, whatever. And this exercise has gotten me through some really dicey times in my life, where you just write for 5 minutes at a timer, fold the paper up and put it in an envelope. Don't read it. And it's an amazing experience. You could do it for a month, couple months at a time, and you really find yourself in a place of at least connecting to your body or your moment, because you're not worried about writing for writing's sake. You're just, for a grant or anything. You're writing it for just to write and to connect to your own self. That's one good exercise to be able to do that. And then, of course, there's yoga, mindfulness, any of those activities. Can you go to the next slide? I think, as we said earlier, stress is contagious, but kindness is also contagious. That when they did the research on the kids, and when Emily Ansel did it on the smartphones where people were tracking their days, they really found that acts of kindness actually were contagious, almost as contagious as they were with with stress. That I was just reading an article today in I think it was the Times or the Post. The comedian. I forget her name for a minute, but she told the story, a comedian, she was telling the story about how she's tried to turn around, aggressive, because we've seen so much hostility and aggressiveness and fear, primal feelings, during the pandemic. And she was just, trying to radically act the opposite of what you would normally act. So a guy came up to her and said, "Hey, you scratched my car." That was Sarah Silverman, I'm sorry. And Sarah was like, instead of saying, "I didn't touch your car, I didn't even go near it," she said something like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's look at the scratch. How can I, pay for it?" And the guy was like, no, it's okay. It's whatever. So that instead of, taking the aggression and responding to the aggression, she responded with this sense of kindness. Is a practice that she's been doing, and I think this radical kindness actually is an extraordinary tool for us to use in these days right now, when we feel like we just want to scream and yell at people all the time. So I think, passing kindness, you see it move from person to person. Can you go to the next slide? I think the other thing that's important for us to remember is that one of the remedies for high levels of stress actually make us yearn for connection. There are different gender responses to stress, but I think that in general, the stress in females in particular found that instead of fight flight, women often are trying to tend and befriend, right? So in the midst of a high level incident, what can I do to help? How can I connect with you during this high level of stress? And so I think it's across the board now, both genders, that, a lot of times stress can lead to aggression, but in general, we can train ourselves to actually, when under a lot of stress, to actually reach out and connect with people. And that is one of the enormous ways of reducing, the biological impact on stress on people. Is even just, I know hugs are not, now, but, connecting with people and making sure that you keep that connection going. We opened this warm line for the state, and we have people who call us every day. Not a lot, but we have some people who are just like, hey, I'm going to the store, I'm going out. Just needing that level of human connection. We have people who call and say, you know what, I just want to talk to someone who's not in my family. So, they're using this idea of connection to supersede their worry and fear. And it, obviously does work very well. Can you go to the next slide? So I think that the opportunities in caring, I know, from my own personal life, is that caring for others really does help create hope and creativity, because you really want to, you have this feeling like you really want to help. This tend and befriend response that happens in stress helps us protect our offspring. It unleashes the instinct to protect the people around you. So in high levels of stress, we try to become more trusting and generous and willing to risk. That has been my view of what's happened in New Haven over the last 12 months, in particular around the food distribution work, the work we're doing on the learning hubs. I've never seen, we have the YMCA working with the Black and brown churches in the communities in Dixwell and in the Hill, in Fairhaven, helping them create daycare centers there. I mean, the level of flexibility and fluidity and creativity that has occurred under these high levels of stress has been really incredible. And I think as we slowly, if ever, get out of COVID, that we can begin to look at what did we learn during this time, and what courage and connection actually worked to be able to relieve the stress for so many significant people in our community. Okay, change the next slide. Gratitude, active gratitude, making sure that you actually practice gratitude is a strong remedy to stress. It's grace in its truest form. It allows people to connect to something larger than themselves. So, having gratitude for kindness that someone else expressed, it allows you to have, to express your positive emotions, relish in some good experiences. It improves your health and helps build good relationships. There's been a lot of research on gratitude, in particular at University of California, Davis and University of Miami. They asked participants to write a few sentences every week focusing on particular topics. One group was just asked to write about things that they were grateful for during the week, and another was asked to write on daily irritations or things that displeased them. And then the folks after 10 weeks who wrote about gratitude expressed more optimism and felt better about their lives. And they had, at the long-term study, fewer visits to physicians and less cases of feeling aggravated or under distress. So practicing gratefulness, and all of these things are maybe things that come naturally to you, but I think being more intentional to relieve your stress and burnout, to practice kindness, to practice gratefulness, are exercises really for you to actually relieve yourself of some purposeful stress. Can you change to the next slide? Humor, you know, is a big antidote, and I don't know, memes seem to be the communication tool for 2021, right? But I think making sure that you watch that comedian on Netflix, if it's, you know, if it feels like that's useful for you, or having a good laugh with your friends, is very important to be able to help move you through. Literally faking laughing actually increases and decreases your cortisol level. So those are, it improves your emotional well-being and your optimism, and it develops your inner strength, and it can really help you connect with others during times of stress. There was this incredible study done on trauma in Israel a while ago. I have to get the reference for you on that, but it was a bombing that they knew was going to occur in a district outside of Israel, and they worked where they trained the children who were going to be put in isolation for hours at a time to be able to actually deal with issues in a more way where they could actually express humor, tell jokes, connecting with each other. They actually had a whole training curriculum for the kid, for this one group of kids around that. And the outcome showed that the kids who had that training before the trauma occurred actually did much better than the kids who didn't. And I think that these tools of gratefulness and humor and are strategies in an emotional literacy that we need to really work on to strengthen in our kids and families, so that they could use them in times of, you know, great need. Can you go to the next slide? I think we're back to, you have to go 2 slides ahead to 16, yeah. Practicing compassionate leadership is very important, and you know, it's an interesting thing. I said it doesn't make you weak. Get a lot of challenges to being compassionate as a leader sometimes, and maybe that's a whole nother conversation we can have at another time. But I think that it's very critical that we practice compassion right now during COVID, putting yourself in other people's shoes. Practice kindness, not so much people pleasing, relaxing your judgments, listening generously, and being clear on accountability. So it's not like you're going to be letting people have a pass, but rather, you know, being clear on what people need to do to keep their workload going. You have to practice your own self-compassion when you're working on compassionate leadership. You have to make sure you have good emotional intelligence or literacy, practice being in the moment, and you know, Annie Lamott uses radical self-care is really about making time and space as necessary, not just as extra, to be able to get into a calm place and connect with your feelings and your emotions. Can you go to the next slide? There are some resources that I wanted to share with you. If you don't know the Connecticut Nonprofit Alliance, it's a membership organization, but they also have some really good resources on the website. It's not a bad organization for you to belong to. They do a lot of advocacy for nonprofits across Connecticut. Another resource that, you know, perhaps Jackie can help you with in the Community Foundation is connecting with other organizations. I've had a couple of really great conversations with folks, some who are on the line now, just, you know, talking as from a leadership perspective, you know, what are you doing? How do you do it? It's just been very, very helpful to have a connection with other people who are going through, even if the organization is not the same. Most insurance programs have EAP, and it's very underutilized. The EAP programs, it's free with your insurance usually, and making that employee assistance program available to your staff and making sure that they know about it would be very, very helpful. If you have, I put Clifford Beers' phone number on here in case you need. We do see kids and adults, but my phone number and my email is on the first slide. So if you really feel like you have an issue that you can't really figure out, I certainly welcome you reaching out to me and, you know, asking. The Reach Out Connecticut warm line, if you go, I think it's the next slide. Actually, it's the one after this, so we'll go back to this slide. This is is available to anyone in the state, anyone in your staff or the people you're working with. We're open pretty much business hours, I think 8 to 7 every day, and on the weekends, I think 10 to 7 or 10 to 8. And it's free and totally, it's answered by folks who are our client service representatives, so it's not a clinical line. If there is a clinical emergency, we can transfer the person to 911 or 211. But it's a very useful tool for people to use to just talk. We have if you go to the Reach Out Connecticut website, there's resources, basic needs, and I'm sure you guys can add to it and send me some emails. We can update it, but across the state for food, basic needs, and housing issues and mental health resources within all the different areas of Connecticut. So that's something as a resource that you can use yourself. Can you go back one slide to the other? There's a psychological first aid, which is a very good training. It's on through the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. It's not for people who are clinical, but are it's to create a clinical response team in the midst of an epidemic. So psychological first aid was first developed after 9/11. There were a group of trauma therapists who were actually teaching people across New York City to become first aid workers for psychological first aid. And the tools are very simple, but really very, very useful, and it's well worth, I think the training takes, you know, a couple hours or at the most. We trained, Clifford Beers was the response in the Sandy Hook shooting, and we had all of our staff trained in psychological first aid. But it's, I think, just as mental health first aid has been an issue, psychological first aid is a little bit more focused on trauma. And what we're going to be seeing is a lot of unresolved grief as we begin to see and connect with people. You know, we haven't had the normal processes for funerals, for death. You know, people who have experienced an incredible amount of loss, people have lost their jobs, they've lost their family members, and you know, grief and trauma are going to be the things that we're going to be looking at for the next, you know, the next round, I think. And so it wouldn't be a bad idea to have some of your staff trained in this. And then CERC is just an amazing resource. If you haven't had an opportunity to go on their website in terms of a lot of social justice, and also they have some COVID resources in there. It's an educational resource center, but Ingrid Kennedy, who's the director there, is, you know, just a beautiful leader around helping organizations really look at anti-racist behaviors and social justice, and I highly recommend that link for resources. So I think that might be the last slide. So we could get out of the slides and talk a little bit. Maybe we can open it up for discussion or thoughts, reflections.
I mean, I'll just say I thought it was great. Hi, it's Samantha Cross. I work at the Women's Business Development Council. I thought it was great, and the big takeaway I had was around, you know, making sure that your behaviors are appropriate and rational, and getting yourself in the right headspace. I've been stuck at home with a 3- and 4-year-old for a year, so that hasn't gone well sometimes. And also with the clients that we deal with, right? Like if you're not in a good space to have empathy and lead by example, it gets really nasty. So I'm really thankful to have that that as a cue, and I'd love to get a copy of the slides to share with my clients and with my colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Samantha. And I'm so sorry. I can't imagine how you do it. And I think that compassionate leadership that I talked about, right, we also have for ourselves. How do you arrange your life so that you can do at least take care of yourself in the midst of that? And it could be not working all the time, or it could be, you know, it's okay if the 3-year-old comes on your lap while you're doing the Zoom, you know, but
yes, screen time is, we don't judge screen time anymore, but in general, but it's fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alice, we're getting some requests for the slides to be available to folks. Can I send them to folks after this session?
Sure.
Great. So everyone that's
you can steal them, meaning you can put your own name on them and use them as your own. So feel free. I think you have the notes field. Some of it may be helpful, some of it may not be, but I'm really bad at the notes in slides. But you're welcome to have it and share it. Steal shamelessly and share relentlessly. How are people doing? I can't believe you're on a Zoom on stress. I assume that there's a reason you came on. But how are you holding up? What are you doing? What's working for you to take care of yourself during this time?
I just wanted to start off by saying thank you, because this was really great. I especially love that meditation at the start, and also getting the language is so helpful. Sometimes you just need to put a word on things. But I will say, and also being reminded of good things to do. So I've always been wanting to do automatic writing. I haven't, and I never like really formally put a name to it, but lately I used to write in my journal all the time, and I fell off. But just instinctively, with all this stress and needing to just have the right way of speaking to my therapist, I've been basically automatically writing. Like when I'm feeling a certain way, just jotting it down. I actually keep multiple notebooks on me in my purse, and I found that that's been really helpful. Like at any time of the day, something comes to me, let me just jot it down, and it's definitely taken a load off. And then the other things that have been working during this time has been, I found myself listening to a lot more, like discovering things that I didn't think I cared for before, but using it as an outlet has been wonderful. So I've always been a reader, and suddenly I never used to like audiobooks, and suddenly I got into audiobooks. And I've read so many more books over the past year. It's been wild. So Yeah, just being open to tapping into new outlets has been really good. And yeah, attending trainings like this has been good. So just having to be reminded of the tools you can tap into for mindfulness has been really critical.
Well, that's great. So anybody who needs help, we're going to call Jen Day to get reminded. Buy those little notebooks and put them in your purse, right? Or
and I got some good book titles as well. So.
Oh, good. Okay.
Alice, I'm wondering if anyone came this morning with a particular challenge in mind, and while keeping anonymity. There may be an employee or colleague that you see struggling and don't quite have the tools. Now maybe you do, but maybe you need a little more as to how to help that person. Is there anyone who has a situation or a challenge that they need some help with, that while we have Alice and the group here, because the group can also contribute to the solutions, some support from each other on how to work through a situation. Anyone have anything in mind? Okay, I'm glad that it's just the sort of general.
In mind, but I think it just comes with the territory. I mean, first of all, thank you, Miss Alice. I really appreciate the presentation this morning, and it seems like I'm on this quest for mindfulness. I just attended one that Yale gave a couple of days ago, so it's
oh, good. Yeah,
we're all on the right track with being mindful, and along with what helps me is, prayer and meditation. So again, thank you for this. But I do have staff members now. I mean, we're in the midst of planning for a gala this weekend, and the stress load is just through the roof. And one employee in particular, it's like we can't seem to get him off the ledge because, I mean, he's put everything into this, and it's hard to watch. It's really hard to watch.
Well, it's also contagious, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe pointing out the contagion, and also, with compassion, like, what do you do to relax? Like, does he play? Does he, I don't know, go smoke? I don't know, but like, what is it that he could do to kind of chill? And not to put extra pressure on him, like, hey, by the way, I know you're stressed, but you're making everybody else stressed too. But another thing as the leader could be to make sure there's time for play. I mean, you run the symphony, right? So what if, you have your name, the New Haven Symphony
I don't
Orchestra?
run the symphony. I'm just a player, a part of it.
I know, but you're in the symphony, like, and everybody plays, right? I mean, that's the idea. So what kind of play environment can be set up even for 15 minutes in preparation for the gala? I don't know, some sort of silly, humorous, or mindful space that you could kind of pull people into, so that they're in a better preparation. I mean, we know, before you do anything, right, you always the green room warm up, and but maybe having an intentional space like that might be helpful. But it is contagious, and I know myself. I mean, it's weird. Sometimes you don't know until people start telling you. Like, I'm really worried about you. When you hear that like 2 times or 3 times, you're like, oh, okay, something's going on, So, I don't know. Sometimes we're not aware. Also, artists are very high strung. I was a performance artist in the East Village for many years before, and you never wanted to see me before I opened a show. I was the meanest person ever. Most, like, oh, I'm painting this set. And I don't know, it's a stressful time. But.
Alice, I noticed on our participant list that there are multiple representatives from 3 organizations. I wanted to point that out to say thank you for allowing the space for those people to come together from those organizations. Now you've been through this like experience, you have the like vocabulary, you have the tools that you can share with one another. But I wondered if anyone wanted to talk, and I see you, Elias, kind of nodding your head because New Haven Works is one of those. I
love New Haven Works. Sorry.
I think it's interesting that you all chose to do that. And I hope that now as there'll be opportunity for you as a group to be able to come back together and sort of debrief on this. And if you even want to create that space here, I mean, we can do that. But I wondered how it works as a group dynamic.
This is Elias. So we've had basically a new weekly meeting that we've kind of been experimenting with since I think August, and it's somewhat informal space, just our career counselors together, and I feel like it's a flexible space that could maybe turn into, when needed, a place to debrief about things we've learned, things we're taking away. So I see that as one potential, but we may also want to broaden it into our entire staff as well.
How big is your organization?
It's about 12 people full-time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A good size to do something like this intentionally. Well, nothing really stressed more than having 15 minutes where you can actually do, what you need to do before you go on to your next Zoom. I just want to say, as a resident of New Haven and, been here a long time, I'm so grateful for the work that you're all doing for our people. And anything you need or help or whatever, reach out. And I hope the same goes for me to you. I wish I could meet you face to face, but maybe we can. But I'm just really grateful to live in New Haven, actually. Very special place.
Well, thank you, Alice. Thank you for the tools that you've given us all, for the space that you've given us all. And, now we've got this extra 15 minutes to sort of live in that space for a little bit before you get on to I was at church once, and the minister got up, and when he started his sermon, the first thing he did was invite people into the gap. So when you get home, you're going to have to cook that Sunday dinner. You're going to have to do this and this, and what are the kids doing? But right now, be in the gap. So continue the gap that you're in right now before you get on to the next thing. This is a bought 15 minutes, borrowed 15 minutes. Stay in the gap for a little bit, debrief, de-stress. Just live there for a minute. And
That's great.
Contribute to the rest of the day being a little calmer. And then the chaos hits again. So I apologize for that. Thank you for, as Alice said, thank you for all that you do. It's amazing.
You're welcome.
This far, 10 months later. Thank you, Alice, for all that you've given.
Thank you.
For pulling all this together. We appreciate all that you do for us. And we hope to see you all. I dropped in the chat that we do executive director roundtables, and we do board roundtables, which are that space where you can just share. We'll probably be later in the year doing development directors and program directors as well. So a place again where you can just come together and share challenges, ask questions, just be with your peers. As I mentioned, the consultant support program or any of the other ways, and so many of the tools that Alice gave us, those warm lines that you'll be able to utilize. We'll
Yeah.
get slides out soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Great seeing you. Bye, Lori.
you.
Bye, Giselle.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.